Good morning, good morning, good morning. As my voice warms up in the morning, good morning. Hey, what's going on, dude?
What's up, man?
Happy Wednesday.
Thanks, man.
So I saw your text about the first Ascendant as we're kind of warming up here before we kick off the show. You got thoughts? Because that's the beta's coming up on the 20th. Basically, I was told anybody who applies for the beta is going to get to play the beta. So,
Okay. I'm interested in playing it. I don't know that I'd give it more than like a day or so. So like
you wouldn't need to, I don't think.
I would treat it like Outriders, where I just want to kind of know what it is, but I don't
Mhm.
really.
Well, we don't even have a release date on it. So ultimately, like what would be good, because like I plan on checking it out, but it won't be during the workday. So my plan is to absolutely play it, and I think we both actually will have our own kind of keys, so we can.
Did you apply as both?
I think I haven't applied as work to game. I've applied as Ginger Prime.
Oh, I got it as work to game.
Right, meaning they reached out to us on this platform.
Well, then I'll just say yes.
Yeah, say yes, and then all you got to do is in Steam go and request beta access, and you should be good to go. So like, there's 2 steps there. So yeah, just reply to her, say yes. But then we could actually talk about kind of what our thoughts are, because this is a Nexion product. Like ultimately, there's the real question, like, is this
Things
what
are looking
Outriders
up,
should have
man?
been? Oh,
Things
yeah.
are reaching out to us again.
Woohoo.
If things are looking up, or the world is crumbling.
It
People
depends.
are reaching out.
It depends on your YouTube feed.
I got a brand sent me some stuff to try like a month ago, and I tried it, and then they were interested in doing a sponsorship run, and their brand manager reached out and said, we were interested in just going ahead and making you a partner.
Oh, nice.
But we want to have a conversation first to make sure we're aligned. And so we had a conversation, and they were like, yeah, like that's exactly what we're looking for. So they're just bringing me on as a partner.
Heck yeah, dude.
So like things are looking up.
Things are looking up. And good morning, chat. Thank you already. We got one pre-like before the show went live. So to whoever that legend was out there, thanks for liking the content.
They can always take it back.
They can always take it back. They're like, let me just claw back that like. It's gonna be so funny if that like turns to 0. I can take them back.
You're both here? Whoa. Just one of my favorite ones, please.
Whoa. What's this nonsense? Oh no, these live shows in the morning. Like, what's happening here?
I don't got your second order of fuel. Mine, I already ordered mine. I don't know when it comes in. And on recommendations from you guys, I had trouble deciding. I was like, I wish they had smaller bags so I could try. So I went with cookies and cream.
Yeah.
For the black bag, and then I really just couldn't resist. So I went with chocolate for the white Huel because I don't know what the difference is, and so I already knew I liked that. And then I did order a premix of the vanilla because I wanted to order a bag of the vanilla, and I was like, well, let me at least like get a feel for like how vanilla is their vanilla.
How vanilla is this?
How vanilla we talking here? We talking like full vanilla bean? Like this is intense? We talking just like a nice creaminess? What's the plan?
Are we talking vanilla here? Like, is this next level? Vanilla. That we say it in Texas. Tejas.
So I'm really looking for like, what do I keep around as like those base flavors to make shakes with? And the upcoming other sponsorship is also a liquid. And so my wife's like, you're just going to be on all liquids, aren't you? I was like, yeah. It's caffeine. It's caffeine stuff. It's energy and
yeah.
And actually what I really like that they also offer some like non-caffeinated options that I can use that I've been using when I work out. They sent me some. I was like, oh, great.
One of the things that like I like, because when I was up in Chicago hanging out with Bearded Blevins, he had a fridge full of Focus water, and so it's just like caffeinated water, like it in a can. I was like, that actually I drank a lot of the peach, and I was like, this is great. Like I really enjoyed this. It was not like an intense like coffee caffeine, so it was just kind of a light little hit. But I probably overconsumed on the caffeine side. I should. I don't know. Like I like the Focus water, and I should probably even if not for like sponsorship opportunities or whatever, like literally just for like myself. Like I've been stepping down on my coffee consumption, so I've cut it by like 75%, which is great. So I think I'm sleeping better. You
Did
know,
you
in
cut it out of the
order.
first hour of your day?
Yes.
Took me like 4 or 5 weeks, but once I did it,
Well,
it's
I do
way
water
better.
first.
Mm-hmm.
And then essentially I also cut it off at 11 in the morning. Like, so if I haven't had coffee by 11, I'm done. I'm not having I used to have an afternoon coffee with Jules. Now I just like will
Okay.
hang out with Jules, but not like in a caffeinated way.
So if you want the next level, if you want to go back to like heart palpitations from the same amount of coffee you're having now, that really good, like the world is moving slow, I'm amazing, and I'm
That
Superman.
300 cups of coffee
Okay,
kind of
ready?
Futurama aspect.
Yeah. So if you want that, once every 7 to 10 days, you need to take 24 to 48 hours off.
Yeah.
All the way.
I took the whole
So I
weekend
don't
off.
have caffeine on weekends unless I'm like with family and we like go out to brunch or something. And a lot of times if I go somewhere and they just have like drip or whatever,
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? Like
Now
that's
what?
not worth it.
Not
Like,
worth it.
yeah,
Not
like
worth
it's
it.
not, that's not worth the fact that like Monday morning when the work week starts, I can come out of the gates swinging.
This is hard, dude.
Because that's why it's a legal stimulant, because it drains from your system so fast.
Yeah.
And by never letting it build up like that, I don't get the headaches or anything when I stop.
Oh, see,
as opposed to before, I used to get these bad headaches.
I've had a headache transition into the new caffeinated or less caffeinated version of myself.
Yeah, it's
which
hard.
Turns out is a better version of myself. I'm less jittery. The John C says, you guys are streaming early. Lol, love it. John, we got really, really good news for you. Chris, do you want to tell John what he's won?
John, you have won the month of October 2022, where stream starts at 7:30 on Twitch 5 days a week, and Chris and Brian are bringing you collabs Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Yes. And so we're breaking you guys the latest in terms of community discussion, news, and more, all really focused around MMORPGs. So I know that like a lot of you guys probably here for the 14 discussion, but Chris also plays Guild Wars, World of Warcraft. I've been loving New World, so I've been, you're going to hear me continue to praise that game, and I'm very excited for its future. I'm also hopeful going to be jumping back into Guild Wars at some point. It's gonna be a good time. So we're also looking forward, and we'll be bringing you guys coverage of Ashes of Creation. If Pantheon decides to ever really start gearing up, like I'd be happy to share more of that. Throne of Liberty for early 2023 right now, unless something strange happens there. Diablo 4, we're actually gonna be talking about Diablo 4 today, because we were talking about last night, and it's like, yeah, I'd love to actually talk about Diablo 4. I've seen a lot of videos on it. I've got to pay. Chris and I have both played Diablo 4. And so there's a part of me that really, really wants it to be good. But there's also, like the general consensus. I think the internet's already, well, it could work out better for it. We'll talk about that in the Diablo section. But based off of the way that the trends and the algorithms working on Diablo 4, that could actually work out in its favor. Like if we're going to sit here and say it's already dog crap, awful, and then they can come up a couple steps above the dog crap, then I think they might have if the gameplay is good. There we go. Rory, what's up, my dude? Is Chris playing Dragonflight? Chris, tell them what Rory's won.
Rory pre-patch, I believe, starts in like 13 days ish. That's the date. So you are here on a Wednesday. We're talking about Dragonflight, the second half of stream today, and my plans and what all I want to get done in Dragonflight. I'm absolutely playing Dragonflight. Playing pre-patch to like that month after launch is the amazing time to be in WoW, even if the expansion's bad. And if it's good, it's only better to be there at the beginning. So absolutely, I'm going to play some Dragonflight. I think the question then is like, what do I do first? I think I'll be going as a bear main because I just like my bear. By the way, with Rory here, last week I did voiceover for my first time through the Paladin quest line, 30 through 50. And I don't know if you guys knew this, but when Rory's having a really bad day as a Paladin main, I'm pretty sure that he goes and beats up some innocent monkeys for no reason. Because that quest line was weird, and as a paladin main versus a warrior main, which is way better, where we just like innocently like go in and accidentally slaughter some civilians. What was with the monkey beating? What was that? And they were like, yeah, way to be a real hero. You showed some valor. You're amazing. I feel awful inside.
I feel pretty good after I beat some monkeys.
And I said it on stream. I was like, I can't believe Rurikhan beats up monkeys. And my mod was kind enough to say, please, no one go into Rory's stream and call him
A monkey
a
beater.
monkey killer, because he's not going to have context, and that's not okay. And I was like, right, obviously. I'll just tell him next time I see him.
Now, Chris Wolfman asks, when is the next WoW day?
Today, Wednesday. Every non-lore week Wednesday is the typical plan. Obviously, next week we have a patch, and unfortunately, I'm out of town on patch day. So next week is going to be Final Fantasy 14 patch day, but I'll slide some WoW in later in the week. And we don't have another lore week till like the 31st. So the schedule down below has been totally shot. So Wednesdays. So probably today, sometime next week, next week's all over the place because I'm traveling Monday and Tuesday because I have to help my dad travel. My dad can't travel by himself, and my brother took him to Seattle to see his family. He has family all the way up the West Coast, and they started in Long Beach as a family, and they've just slowly, the older they get, the more north they move. And they were like, his parents were first generation Canadian, so I think like his siblings are just slowly going to accidentally become Canadians again. They're just slowly getting drawn home. So I'm flying up to Seattle to get him, and then flying back Tuesday. So I'm going to miss, we'll do the collab Monday morning. I won't miss that. And then I'll fly out Tuesday. I'll fly out after that and come back Tuesday. So WoW may move to later in the week so that I can touch 625 as fast as possible. But the 26th as well. I think Paladin literally has the worst job quest. Don't tell me that. I still have to do 50 through 60 and 60 through 70. I'm really looking forward to it. I will say that the Paladin lore 30 to 50, incredible for world building. The people in the Paladin quest, terrible people. By far the worst people. Phenomenal quests. I paired it with Sunken Temple of Karn hard, where I learned about some Azima, Ul'dah, Sildeen lore, and the monk quests, which also focused on a lot of that. And if any of you have not done Paladin 30 through 50, Monk 30 through 50, or the Sunken Temple of Karn hard unlock, which is not New Game Plus, those are three things worth doing before patch 6.25 as we prepare to step foot in the Sildeen subterrane. That's as much as I can tell you to give you a reason to go do it. Also do your Hildy without spoiling anything.
The Quatina Starfire says, start of an expansion or patch is usually a good time to get into World of Warcraft. Chris agrees with that.
Yes.
Thunderous applause.
Pre-patch is the time. Pre-patch is a unique event. It's amazing. Imagine if a Final Fantasy seasonal event took the place of FanFest in hyping the expansion and was in game. The pre-patch events are a blast, and they don't take like a ridiculous amount of time, but they're a blast. Like we burn down capital cities. Like they're chaos. Wonderful. The events and they're non-repeatable until something like Classic comes along. And so they're yeah. They're wonderful. Brian has tried WoW 2 or 3 times, never made it to cap. So I don't know that it's his cup of tea.
They're making some updates, like in terms of like how targeting works, especially for controller, like target nearest, etc., which is like ultimately one of the things that was like just purely frustrating. So one of the problems that I always run into, and even within 14 has the same risk that this happens, but at least in 14, like I never am alone unless I want to be, like having that option. And wow, I just was like, yeah, there's nobody around, and realistically, if I reached out, I'm sure people would have come along on that journey with me, and would have made it way more enjoyable. So, if with the controller changes, if I do get the urge to controller guide it up, I'm gonna have to ask for people to just hang out with me and play with me, so that I actually get it done. If I'm running around in a quest in a world that I just like haven't really been invested in. I had fun when Chris and I were playing BFA, like, because I was like, that's fun. We're running around together. This is great. And then I ended up being like mostly alone in Shadowlands. And I was like, I have no context to any of these characters. Like, I don't care. Like, and then at some point I was like, why am I stressed? Like, all right, let's just move on.
Not scalable. Like, Brian needs a personal WoW Ethos Asher to escort him at all times. And the moment there is not a tour guide, it is not the right game.
Right. And 14 would
which
be
is
the
fine.
same.
And
14
there are
would be
people
the
that play 14 that
exact
way.
same
It's fun with
problem.
my friends.
Right.
And the moment my friends aren't online, I hate this game. It's like, well, that's okay.
Right. Well, and that's that 14 has the built-in Final Fantasy nostalgia for me. So that there's always that connection, and there's also that connection to 1.0. So it's like there's that aspect. But yeah, whenever I find myself playing a multiplayer game solo, it's like, all right, we're good.
So the new player experience in WoW, Brian, the new player experience in WoW as it sits today, if I was trying to convince you today, just know this is like not going to be a good sales pitch. Step one, we are going to start you in, let's assume you'd never played WoW. We are going to start you in Exile's Reach. Exile's Reach is something that all MMOs should learn from. A confined space that is meant to actually teach you how to play the actual MMO and give you a taste of everything so that it can also act as a free trial. People talking about how big a free trial is. I don't care if a free trial has 500 hours in it if the first 3 hours of that sucks. I want dense, good gameplay, front loaded, because you want to hook people from that first minute they log in. I think racing games do a great job of this. They let you drive the phenomenal car through the most beautiful tracks around really cool other cars, and then they take it all away and you get to actually play through the game and unlock that. And MMOs just don't do that. You just don't get to see cool stuff and feel meaningful early on and see what it's actually going to look like. 14's really slow out of the gate, but with WoW, they actually do that right. I think Exile's Reach is a wonderful job for being a sampler of what to expect from World of Warcraft. After you come out of Exile's Reach, you're going to play through Battle for Azeroth. Now, if you started today, you would play through Battle for Azeroth in a predetermined order, even though it wasn't at the time. You would be all alone because it's legacy content with no reason for anybody to do it. And before you finished all the zones, you would accidentally hit level cap and it would push you into Shadowlands. Now, Shadowlands, as a Final Fantasy XIV player, is like Endwalker, and it's meant to make callbacks to every expansion prior, but you haven't even finished the only expansion you've touched, so don't worry, you're not going to know what's going on, except this time, there is now an MSQ, and you are going to be required to complete it. So now you are doing Endwalker MSQ with literally no context. So you're going to go through that. You're going to clear all the zones, and you're going to then get to start working your way up systems that will not matter in a matter of weeks. So just hit cap and stop. Now, if you come in post Dragonflight, it'll be the exact same thing, except instead of Shadowlands, you'll go BFA direct into Dragonflight, which in theory will be a better experience, but I don't know much. So the new player experience, like if it ends up being MSQ based again, I think MSQ based is better for the game as a whole, but because they had you jump into like the finale as the first true MSQ they told, it's really hard. It's a really hard ask. Now, the advantage of it over the Final Fantasy XIV new MSQ is, while it is hard, it's also short. You should be able to just blast through it, as opposed to in 14, like, yeah, I think the new player experience along the way has some real joy, but it is hidden in a 300 to 500 hour march up the mountain. Yeah. And if you like that 300 to 500 hours over your first 5,000 hours in Final Fantasy XIV, that's really the only 300 to 500 that'll be like that. Like, you never get more story. It ends and you're done and you're caught up like the rest of us. And you get a little bit of story every 4 months, 2 months, whatever. But if you don't like it, it's like, okay, well, you're going to love the second 3,500 hours, but you got to climb that mountain first.
You got to climb that mountain. Now, Astralyn, thank you so much for the tier 1 sub here on Twitch. 4 months of support on a 4-month streak. That is phenomenal. Also, as just a kind of reminder, if those of you who are interested and you have Amazon Prime, if you like the content and you want to drop those Bezos bucks on us or over on anybody on the Twitch side of things, remember that's a free perk that you guys have, and you can go choose to drop that on anybody on Twitch once a month. Even if you don't like Twitch, I know a lot of people are like, I hate Twitch, but you got Amazon Prime, like you get that free sub. So go spend those Bezos bucks on somebody, and you can always dip out as well. Gets a couple perks. We got the connection in with Discord, so we got special roles, emotes, so much more. And welcome in, everyone. Good morning, WG, aka Wes. How you doing, dude? Thanks so much for y'all being here. We got we've hit 50 people here for the pre-show. That means it's time we do the show. I have no rules. I was just trying to look at what numbers are. 16 likes, guys. That means it's time to go. We gotta so
everybody know.
Everybody knows 16 likes.
16th like starts the mower.
Yeah, and once you get to 1,000 likes, it ends the show immediately.
That ends the show automatically. That's the broadcast.
It's like, all right, guys, y'all did it. We got to go. So, Chris, are we ready? Today, we've got the live show. We're going to be talking about Final Fantasy XIV Not Alt Friendly. A lot of discussion going on within the community, especially around Yoshi P's latest comments. We should try the... Wait, do you like what you're laughing? I don't know why.
We talked about this topic coming up, but even then I'm still like, spicy. These guys just finding drama and nothing.
We don't. It's literally always there. We're the guys who are like, all right, let's talk about it. Okay. All right. People are talking about it. Why are y'all talking about it? Like,
except this time everywhere. It's like, no, I've actually already had this frustration. Like usually I'm like, what are they doing?
What are they doing? It's like, no. It's kind of nice. It feels good. If there's a vindication, I'm not gonna lie, that it's like, yeah, welcome to 2020. Like what was it? Like 2016. Like, come on, guys. Like, this is gonna be something that I think will be a problem down the road. We're also gonna talk about, does Diablo 4 have any chance in hell? And I think we'll open up with kind of our hopes for Final Fantasy 14 in 2023. So we'll start you guys off on a positive note. We'll talk about Diablo 4, and then we're gonna that or we'll just crash and burn on the alt friendly conversation. Either way, Chris, are you ready to kick this into high gear, dude?
Yeah, I should have started ads sooner. It's gonna start mid rolls on them.
Do you need to run an ad real quick, and we just kind of?
I think it's handling it. I think Twitch is saying, you didn't wake up and get it together. You're a terrible host. We're just gonna do it without you. If you take control of your mid rolls on Twitch, it just then all these new changes are not bad. But if you just let it do its thing,
it's actually hugely helpful to actually pre-game the thumbnails, and it also from the editing perspective, Quatina, like it when I go to chop up the things, I actually am able to both visual and look for the audio cues, so I know where to cut. So it basically saves me an hour worth of time. It literally is a game changer for me and how I edit. I do.
Okay, I don't. I'm gonna go grab my
go
coffee.
Get your coffee. I'll entertain you all with this thumbnail. Does Diablo 4 have any chance in hell? Sorry. Oh man. All the while, refugees doing their first raid progression push during the population lulls. I think we probably will see more of that. The question I'm betting though is that I bet we see a lot of people go play Dragonflight. It's Quintana. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry, my brain sucks when it comes to language and words. D4 will do just fine. I hope it has better than. I think it will have a better launch than D3, 100%. Diablo 4 is fun as hell. Like, it's a fun. Like, even what we played of it, I was like, this is fun.
Did you play D3 on launch?
Yeah, it was a rough go of it. I actually liked how they were doing the cash shop and like where you could buy and sell and stuff. Like, I thought that was a great idea. Clearly was their loot they had a loot problem because it was all balanced around people using the store as opposed to like getting drops that actually mattered to you. It felt like it was like, oh, I'm playing a barbarian, I'm gonna get nothing but mage gear to try and encourage you to use the shop, as opposed to like, oh yeah, let me get some actual loot, and then if I get something I don't want, I can toss it up there. All right, we ready to kick this in high gear?
Yeah, as long as you're slow out of the gate.
All right, cool.
I got a couple seconds left.
Here we go. Let's get ready to freaking roll. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Crystal Core Radio Podcast. Brian and Chris here for Work to Game, talking about the latest Final Fantasy XIV discussion. Even going to be bringing up some Diablo 4 in today's show. The overall structure is we're going to talk about our hopes for Final Fantasy XIV in 2023. We just got the announcement of FanFest, so there is some really big speculation and some hopes and things that we've probably already predicted. Chris has been pretty accurate with his dates and his spreadsheets, so we have some good insight as to what can be expected, but we're going to also talk about what we'd love to see, what we hope. Then we're going to shift into a Diablo 4 conversation, talking about the game, what people are talking about it online, concerns over monetization, how Diablo Immortal is kind of affecting that. Is that going to work out in his favor? Both Chris and I have already played Diablo 4, and I'm personally very excited for its launch. But there's lots of questions up in the air. Obviously, as anybody's following the Microsoft Activision Blizzard acquisition process knows that still hasn't closed yet, so we will continue to wait and see. moving along a little bit.
Brazil said they're not going to slow it down.
UK might be slowing it down, at least
It has
based
to
off
go
of
through
some
each
comments.
country that has to be concerned if it's bad for consumer. Now, I
Mhm.
think a lot of people are reading into it. So, like Brazil said, it's not bad for consumer, and people are like, "Is it bad for PlayStation?" And Brazil's like, "That's not our job." Like, I don't like. We don't care if PlayStation goes out of business as a country. Like, we're not rooting for or against anybody. We're here to make sure that the consumer doesn't get screwed, and we don't think the consumer will get screwed.
Mhm.
And
And
so people are like, ooh, they
yeah.
toss shade at PlayStation. No, they just said they literally don't care. Like less than that. Apathy is what was tossed at PlayStation.
And finally, we're going to talk about a spicy topic about Final Fantasy 14 not being alt friendly, which is going to be, I'm sure, going to raise some eyebrows and bring out some, interesting opinions. But we always like to hear from you guys what you guys think, especially as it relates to Yoshi P's latest comments from the Q&A and how the community is receiving it, and where maybe we have some ideas. Maybe we can take those forward, at least as just a feedback mechanism for the devs at some point in the future. I don't think things are going to change anytime soon, but it's important to have the conversation because we've been having the conversation for a while. We were told we were idiots, and now it's fun to see all the people who disagreed with us go and be like, wait a minute,
And
maybe
given
they
long
had
enough,
it
the game
right.
has changed. The
Mhm.
game has changed over the last 9 years. So, like, given feedback, it does slowly get there. You just can't expect overnight changes, which is good. Like, it's also avoided us from going like way too far down the wrong road.
Yeah. And so that is going to be the show. We are streaming this both on YouTube and on Twitch. And ultimately, guys, if you do enjoy Twitch, we would also encourage you to go lurk on that stream as we are trying to grow just the overall numbers on Twitch. We thank you guys so much for your support and being there. We thank you for being here on the YouTube side, and we thank you for the likes. And also, if you guys enjoyed these live shows, we do take them down into MP3 format where you can kind of listen to them on your own. And the MP3 usually rolls out a couple days after the live show does, and we clip it up and all that good stuff. So if you've been following the channel for any period of time, nothing I just shared should have been kind of new or revolutionary, but regardless, we do thank you guys for being here as a part of it. Feel free to continue to weigh in like you are, and we will highlight your comments like we do and discuss them as well. So Chris, first things first, let's talk about 2023 Final Fantasy 14. Obviously, we have the FanFest announcement. I think essentially when we start to look at our hopes for the game over the course of the next year, most likely we're talking patch 6.3, 6.4, and 6.5. I would be generally curious as if you think 6.55 will make it in 2023, or if we see that shift into 2024. Most likely the expansion 7.0 literally will be in 2024 based off of almost confirms it. Japan Fan Fest is scheduled for 2024. So we know we're not going to get 7.0 next year easily. What do you want?
Okay, so I believe patch 6.3 will start the year out in January. I don't think we're getting that this year because I think they're going to take their week over the winter, and I think it's going to kick it out past that New Year's date. Don't have any evidence of that yet. That's just where I feel it goes. Based on that, we kick out 4 months through the spring, and you are basically looking at kind of that mid-May period for 6.4, and then FanFest, July 28th. Which always falls during the port 4 cycle. So we're right on pace. That kicks 6.5 out to October because we do take an extra week in the summer. So I'd put that in the first week of October, give or take. And then we have EU FanFest scheduled for November 21st. That is the actual date, which puts the half patch. I think we are, the half patch is right around there. So we are either 11 days after that, and the second live letter is at FanFest, or they give us the 0.55 going into EU FanFest, put it on like the 14th, which is really exciting because then at that FanFest, they can have any trailer reveals that would spoil the 0.55 MSQ. Because for those of you that don't know, the trailer gets longer throughout the different FanFests as they're able to kind of add in little pieces that would act as a little too much reveal before we've done all of the MSQ tied to Endwalker. And so I think having 0.55 come out like November 14th would be really exciting because we'd have just enough time to speculate. Then we would be able to get some reveals about the 7.0 stuff, some tiny little reveals that maybe the 0.55 quest would have kind of given us the hints. Then we go to Japan, January 6th of 2024, which I believe with no confirmation kicks the 7.0 launch out. Now, I had it as March 18th before.
Mhm.
I think with the JP Fan Fest being in January confirmed, I feel that that's still a perfectly valid date for 7.0 to launch. So I still stand by that date for now. Those dates will hone in as we, is it October 21st instead of November?
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. Okay. Well, I wrote that down wrong. Thank you. Well, if my confirmed dates are wrong, who knows what the rest of them are doing? Thank you. I was writing those down during the 14-hour stream, so I was like, God.
Well, especially because it was late too. It's like,
yeah, it was at the beginning of the 14-hour stream for them, but it was the end of the 18-hour day for us. So thank you. That explains why I was like, why did I put November 21st on my spreadsheet over here on the, I host the Twitch side, Brian hosts the YouTube side. I had the EU Fan Fest above 6.55. And all I could think is, why did I put November 21st before November 14th? What a weird formatting choice, Chris. Yeah, it explains it. That explains it. Go. Okay, so I think 6.55. I originally had it scheduled for 11/14, which would be great. That's great. So that means that we would have the last of MSQ after EU Fan Fest. Yeah. So that's kind of where I think things are. So that means in 2023 we are talking about patch 6.3, MSQ, Alliance Raid, 6.35. We believe we're getting an ultimate. 6.3, which is probably 6.31. 6.35, we're talking about updates to the relic, as well as deep dungeon returning. In addition to this, we're getting all this other like Tataru and all the other side stuff. Then we go into 6.4 in May, which will be the last of the raids. That's 9 through 12 and 9 through 12S with ideally 6.41. Sounds like they're going to leave the delay in. And then 6.45, we will have Criterion updates, Island Sanctuary updates, and relic updates. Keep in mind that by that point, we will have also finished duty support, give or take. We might only have part of Stormblood, but this expansion, we are finishing duty support to catch up with Shadowbringers, and the new player experience will be fully automatable for 4-mans. They are talking about in next expansion, maybe going back and adding 8-man support for the trials that are tied to MSQ, and maybe the 24-man support so that they can get through their Crystal Tower portion, which means that if you're playing on odd hours on a new data center, you will have no issues as a new player once that's done. And then we finish out the year with 6.5 and 6.55. So basically it's what do you want from the rest of true Endwalker content? As we finish up the raid and the Alliance Raid series and all the relic, because it'll all slide into next year.
I think for me, what it's going to be, 2023 is going to actually be defined by, in a way, what the end of Shadowbringers was defined by. Like, what interesting and unique ways can I tackle the content that they give me? Now, I am just, I think, 2 levels away from Omni 90. So that means that my time and investment in the game won't be driven off of, XP in that regards. So what ultimately will be is like, I really had a ton of fun doing speed runs at the end of Shadowbringers. I had a lot of fun doing different things. And so when I look at Criterion and Deep Dungeon, honestly, I think that's where probably my investment will be. And what we talked about in our Relic conversation, just for those of you who didn't see that video or watch that live show, is that if there is an invitation into the Relic from the content that I'm interested in doing, then I might as well just go ahead and do the relic step. But ultimately, I have absolutely no interest in even picking up the quest. And it might be that I'm behind, but that's how my relics have always been. I've always been behind the curve. It was never this big investment on it. So that's kind of something where I'm just like, yeah, I don't see myself in 2023 really worried about the relic or really worried about any of the kind of the big content pieces. I might personally sleep even on the 24-man raid, just to kind of let that story finish itself out and then actually go in, because I've only done the raid one time. I haven't actually done any of the continued story. And so I think essentially it's going to be 2023 is going to be about FanFest first and foremost, and having that like in-person experience, which I'm just itching for. And then beyond FanFest itself, like how can I challenge myself in both the deep dungeon and using Criterion Dungeon as both the community driven aspect, but as a way of like, could I do speed runs on what dungeons? How fast can these dungeons be cleared? Like, just trying to use the sandbox that we have within the game and make it unique and interesting, and try to make something that I am looking forward to, because the Omni 90 grind has been taxing. And that's why it's like I've definitely pulled back on it, because I was like, oh, I'm definitely feeling like I don't want to log in today, so I choose not to. But it's going to be a nice thing to finish, and that's going to set up, I think, 2023 as a way of just like, okay, cool, we have like we have so many dungeons in this game. What's the fastest dungeon run that I can do, like, out of all of those? What's the deep dungeon aspect? And I'm hoping that we see like Lost Actions come into the deep dungeon. I'm hoping that we see Lost Actions as a part of the Criterion, but we'll have to wait. We'll have to wait and see. What do you want to see over that course of the year? Because obviously the story is going to continue. We're going to get, and Yoshi P's already teased that like the ending of the 5 series really obviously sets up 7.0 in a powerful way. The story itself with the raid, and it seems like maybe they're all kind of going to converge. So there's some theory crafting there. I've seen a couple of videos that have been floated my way that I'm looking forward to watching. But that's my take, Chris, on 2023. From a content perspective, like, I would love them to redesign the Frontlines system, because Crystalline Conflict, I think, is just so good that I wish Frontlines as a whole concept was updated to kind of reflect those same kind of changes. But that's pretty much it. I think my list is pretty small, because the things that I want that are bigger, I know probably aren't ever going to happen, or at least not going to happen in a patch cycle.
If Criterion is half as successful as the Savager Ultimate at satisfying the high-end community, and if Criterion is half as successful at drawing in people as the deep dungeon full clearers have been the Island Sanctuary and the Crystalline Conflict, getting our first 3 Criterions, because they said we were also going to get one in 6.5. So probably that 6.55, like, it'll be a big piece of content that hopefully goes on and lives and grows into something really wonderful. That doesn't mean every step will be wonderful. It's going to need to grow. So as a story skipper, this is a pretty packed expansion for me, because this is the expansion I'm going back and catching up, and I'm trying to do it all in one expansion cycle. I'm not trying to blast through it, but like 2 years feels like a really long time to rebeat the game as on an alt for story. And we'll talk about alts as our last topic of the day. But it's also like a really short time to go through effectively like 9 years of story. And I'm doing it alongside my main, who is progressing the Endwalker story. And so I'm doing that at each step. So the fact that I'm keeping my main capped on tomes and stuff every week, and I'm doing all that, and I'm playing other games, 2023 is busy for me, because I am experiencing both the new player experience and the old player experience simultaneously. But if we just look at the 2023 content cycle for Endwalker, there is something I'm excited about in every single main and sub patch. Every single patch has something I'm excited about. Either from gear updates, and like, I really enjoy the vertical progression in this game. It's just simple enough that it's not too crazy, and it's just not mandatory enough that if I ever get busy doing other stuff, I don't feel like I'm penalized for skipping a step. I feel like it's there if I want it, and if I don't want it, that's okay too. So I'm really excited. I think the key moments for me is I'm loving the raid series. I'm loving the Alliance raid series. And so I'm really excited to see where those go. Those are like mainline content. And then I'm really hopeful Criterion is everything that, I know you and me and a lot of people have been asking for this for years. And I hope it can be really close to that right out of the gate as we charge into it next week. Because I'm really excited about it. And so I do hope that it's that thing that, like, this week I had to do an expert roulette on Monday, and I threw up a party finder and 3 DPS joined. Somebody joined as a healer and swapped. And I was like, are we doing this? And they're like, yeah, you're a warrior. And it was the most fun in a dungeon I'd had in
a long time.
I died on one boss because I just made a mistake and there wasn't any way to bail me out. We had a summoner get me back up. We recovered. We didn't die. Like, our clear wasn't record speed because I died. And so we had some slop, but like, it was still like a 15-minute clear or something, 16-minute clear. It was still up there. Like, I've run with groups with a healer that get down around that range, but you're talking groups that are pumping. So I felt it was so fun. So if Criterion, we talked about that with PvP, like, just remove healers, and they effectively did.
Yes.
And it's great. And so, like, if Criterion feels like it's not just this like protected by a good healer or die if you have a bad healer.
Yeah. Well, and that's the question, because when you start to actually have smaller parties, like the one thing I wish they had announced with Criterion personally is that if Criterion was 5-man, because one of the things about Crystalline Conflict, 5-man, it just, I don't know why, but it just feels a little bit more social than any other like piece of content, and it would have been an interesting opportunity to segment these things completely differently, but they didn't. And I'm not gonna bemoan that, right? Like 4-man makes sense. That's, we don't have to re-explain it to anybody, but I thought it would have been a good opportunity in that regards, because you're right, you know, like if it all comes down to either you win based off your healer, that's a lot of pressure on one specific player. And that's one of the reasons Yoshi P's talked about that concern, because when you go with an 8-person or a 24, like you have so much more flexibility that if somebody isn't ultimately doing their job, you can still recover. You can still get it's going to be slower, but you're going to still actually be able to succeed. And so ultimately that's kind of that's kind of where I'm like, it's going to be neat to see. The nice thing that they're doing, and this will be interesting as well, this is something I'm looking forward to as well, is that when you start to say like, hey, you get so many revives, anybody can do it. It kind of reminds me of the Rathlos thing. It's like, yeah, everybody kind of has this as this ability. It's shared. So do people bring red mages? Because you don't need the res, right? Like you don't have this progression versus, you know, like, clears mindset, right? Where if you're going for prog, you want a summoner or a red mage, so you have that additional res ability, so you can see more of the fight. But you now got your clears. Now you're going black mage, which brings more damage. And as long as you're doing your job, you're not dying. So you're good, right? But now, like, okay, anybody can res. Like, is it just, you know, all black mages all the time? Like, are we going to see any kind of job disparity, you know, there? I think what I'm going to be like interested in, especially over the course of 2023, like we talk about FanFest, is that I kind of continue to slip into, I would love, I would rather them not introduce a new job in 7.0 and really give the entire battle system and the jobs that we currently have more time, attention, and love, because we know it takes a lot of work for them to make a new job. Even if we were going to say one job as opposed to two, how do you feel about that? Does FanFest not come out and say new job, or like if there's no slide, Yoshi P's going to have to talk about it then and there and talk about the philosophy about it? What do you think?
I mean, this expansion has been the Yoshi P apology tour, so saying he would have to come out and apologize is not a reason for or against anything this time around. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I would be excited by that, by them not worrying about new jobs and focusing in on the jobs that we have at this point. Like, especially
I just
after
think it's
this,
a big
after the
rug
last
pull
6 months,
because we didn't feel it coming, but maybe that's the right way to do it. But I do think like it's getting harder and harder. And when we see things like the summoner rework and we start to see things like going back with duty support, it can't be all effort forward thinking. Some effort has to be about going backward and making sure that, because this game does a really reasonable job of going back and supporting legacy content, which not only invites in friends you meet along the way as new players, but it also means that when you change as a player, when you change what you want from the game, that your experience going backward is still there. So anybody who's never done Savage, they can go back and do the old Savages. They're still there. Anybody who's never healed in his recent thing, that's going to really lead our final topic of like, try healer. Well, you get to go back and level that up. And so it's important that we preserve the path behind us. We don't just pull the ladder up and say, well, you deal with it.
Yeah.
That
feels like some of that has been happening though. It's like we've advocated that when we talk about level syncing, like, so if Yoshi P was going to come in as a part of this, wouldn't happen in 2023, mind you. Like when we start talking about expansion, like, hey, we're going to look at the level syncing system to make it, you know, more scalable, more flexible, something of that nature. Because we talk about like them bringing old content up to the current level cap, or letting us have our skills, and then the counter argument is like, oh, the content's just going to get burned through and be easy. And it's like it already does that. Like
Unreal doesn't. Unreal punches people sometimes.
Unreal, yeah, but that's them actually taking the content up and looking at it from a design perspective. So
I'm a little concerned with that because Unreal turns out has taken them so much effort. Well, they talked about Unreal's coming back. So like one would, and so like I pictured by now that we would be getting an Unreal we've had before and a new one. I pictured that we would already be running 2 at a time. And this is starting to look a lot like that duty recorder option where it's like, oh, you guys are still struggling to get these out. And they didn't release one alongside the expansion because the expansion is such a full thing. And like, if it was effortless, they could have just pushed one alongside, but it's not effortless. And so they said, hey, we're already putting our effort into the expansions. We don't have time for this extra, which makes sense if that's true. But like from a single standalone piece of content, tells me that's expensive. So I would like to see us reduce to 1 job per expansion and stagger it down like we have the dungeons. There will be those people who say this is the death of the game, but like the total amount of content per patch has done nothing but rise.
See, like the counter argument I would make as a Final Fantasy Online veteran, including 11, the most praised and beloved expansion in 11 had no new jobs, and that was Chains of Prometheia. And so when it comes down, or Promethea, however people want to pronounce it, and so like there's precedence that I do agree, like them going to a kind of a 1 job approach would probably be preferred if they're able to then take that additional time and look at the current battle system and the current job system, because there is an excitement about the new job. Not gonna lie, you're not hearing that argument from me. Please make sure that I'm clear on that. But I just saying that I think at some point, especially when we look at the historical significance of what 7.0 could bring, the complaints that we're continuing kind of hearing throughout this year from both the casual and the hardcore communities, that I'm sitting here, I'm like, well, what if we actually sit down and my precedence is literally crystal line conflict. My precedence is like they really went through and didn't, like, not that I'm saying that PvE needs to be exactly what they did for PvP, but you cannot convince me that the PvP changes don't feel incredible, right? Like it's like, oh, that's a lot of jobs. That was a lot of work that they had to put into that. What if they were going to go and think through like the entire leveling experience, the entire thing forward, and say, what would we do if we were going to sit here and say, hey, we have all these skills, and what is the real identities in the PvE side of things, and really bring out and try to make each of the jobs themselves a little bit more, instead of a lot less homogenized. But
you and I are really pro limited job.
Yes.
And Blue Mage will get an update.
Baby.
We just don't know when.
When is it happening?
We'd love to see a second limited job so that we know what a limited job is right now. Right now, the word limited job and the phrase limited job and the phrase Blue Mage are interchangeable. They're one and the same. But there are aspects of a Blue Mage that are tied to their vision for a limited job, and there are aspects that are just tied to Blue Mage. Just like there's different healers, right? And healer means something, but each individual healer also means something. So if we had more jobs in there, we'd be able to start better distinguish what the role is of a limited job, per se. But like there are people that argue limited job, the Blue Mage should be able to have a version of itself slide into PvP, either its own mode or in with everybody else, or it should be able to slide into current content somehow. Their reasoning for not doing that is that they can't do that without taking out the identity that they built around Blue Mage. Whether or not you like that identity, it does have one, and that's something that they want to preserve. If they're not going to add more jobs, what I'd love to see them do is let the wild side of other jobs out to play.
Yes, dude, so that would be wild.
Imagine if like Summoner got its own piece of like Island Sanctuary and it got to explore summoning things over there. I mean, there's already like pets and stuff living on that island. Like it got to go summon and it had its own little masked carnival. And then when it was out in the world, it had limited actions that it could do that nobody else could do. And so when it was not in group content, when it was open world content, so yeah, I could do it in groups for hunts and fates and things like that, but could not do it inside instances. Could not do it in MSQ battles or whatever. Nothing crazy, but just when it's in the content that it's just meant to be content, right? I was in a hunt train yesterday. There's like 150 people killing a monster. Like that's not, balance is not the goal. Let it do something crazy. Like let it drop a Dalamute. I don't care. Like let it do something silly, and truly summon, like Final Fantasy 16 summons, just blow the doors off, have its own limit break, whatever. And and any job. And so like, and then each expansion say, okay, we're going to add one new job. And then we're also going to make one or two jobs slide into having a limited version of themselves.
Yeah.
And then maybe do some reworks and things like that, like they did with Monk and Summoner, where they get a chance to go back and revisit. Yeah. Revisit doesn't always mean better. They aim for better. It doesn't always mean better. But I do like that they're saying, hey, if something's not in a good state, we're not going to just leave it there.
Yeah, agreed. At the end of the day, when we look at the next year for Final Fantasy, we're talking about 3 major patches at a minimum. We're talking about 2 fan fests at a minimum. And it's going to be an exciting time. It's going to be a lot of information, and that's going to go in through the holidays and then back out into the spring. And I already speculation like, April, May, June for 7.0, which will be wonderful. I know Yoshi P wants to kind of get off the winter expansion cycle and move more into that summer cycle again, which would be really exciting.
It could be further than March. Yeah, that's just my date. I could March, be way off.
As I said, April, May, June is like, as kind of giving them plenty of buffer and leadway into another summer of Final Fantasy 14 with the expansion would be, I think, truly incredible. And Chili's saying, wish we had the Blue Mage Battle Royale that they were talking about as a part of interviews. When those things leak, it's like, maybe 7.0 has that. Like, that would be wild. It would be very interesting to see what ends up befalling it in terms of the future for the game itself. So those are my thoughts. Chris, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up the segment and move into part 2?
No, I just love to know what people like what the thing they're going to do definitely on patch day, besides MSQ and like the mainline stuff. What side content, what 0.5 patch content are you feeling like, God, I almost feel like I need to take off work? Is it Deep Dungeon? Is it Criterion? Is it New Island Sanctuary? Is it the relic stuff? What's that thing that you just feel hungry for that last expansion we've been like, that's crazy. Yeah. Let us know.
Yeah, let us know. And so coming up on today's show, we're going to be talking about the alt friendliness of Final Fantasy 14. But up next, we're going to be talking about any chance in hell for Diablo 4, our thoughts and impressions, especially as everything kind of plays itself out in terms of internet dialogue conversation and the upcoming pending release for this new MMORPG. And thank you, Swan the Survivor, for 1,000 bits of that amazing support. Holy smokes, guys! Thank you, Chris. Hey, you're free to run ads, etc. So
okay,
I'm gonna keep the banner up just so that way, from an editing perspective,
they're already in. They're doing it. They're doing it. You timed it perfectly.
Woohoo.
They were doing it on their own.
Woohoo! I'm going to keep this up on screen for a little bit. So as an editor, I thank myself. Now, Chili says, do you guys think that the Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 would affect the release for 7.0? Square won't want 2 major launches at the same time frame. I think that's, as a 7 remake, I think, when is that scheduled? Do we have a date for that yet, Chili? Oh, if it's coming out holiday 2023, there's not a problem. There's not going to be a conflict with 7.0. 7.0 is going to be spring summer 2024. Yeah, so the 7.0 is not happening in 2023 at all. Boo, 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 boo.
They got a minute left, so you can either do a long intro or we can wait.
No,
he was already handling it.
Yeah, Chili was asking about 7 remake. 16 being next summer also doesn't really conflict with anything like that, so that's gonna be great. K-Vault with 5 gifted subs. Thank you so much. We are almost to 1,000 subs over on Twitch, which, my goodness, from me, just to say thank you so much, guys, for the support over on Twitch. We cannot thank you guys enough. The lurk support also, it's not just a financial thing, guys. Like, lurk support is incredible. And K-Vault, hopefully you're feeling better, dude. I know that Kay and I actually going to go get a drink sometime, hopefully here in the near future. because he is in our area. We've been talking and and it's just like, hey, what's up,
We can
dude?
do that. We can go out and have
We
drinks
can
with
go.
people
We
again.
should honestly do another
That's fun.
community drink night where it's like, guys, we're gonna be at this place. Come hang out, which was incredible. So. Chili, dude, with a gifting a sub. I thank you so much, bud.
We're gonna have a thank you stream close to the end of the month. Where
We're talking the 30th. We're talking the 30th, and Julie was like, "Yeah, Chris and I, you confirm that." We also need to figure out our hotel reservations, because
I talked about that because we may change it up. We may do a little more BlizzConiness.
Oh, we need to figure that out soon, just so that we can, because I don't want to find ourselves not able to get a place. But I wouldn't mind having a place, because Julie is like, do I want to go? And I was like, I'd love it if you go, but there might be some logistical complications.
All right. Okay.
Mandrake, thanks so much for
welcome
being a
back, everybody from ads. And thank you guys for the gifted subs. You guys are seeing the new alerts. So what I've done is I've set aside, we have like 8 different sub variety for people that gift 5 or more. So it groups those because I literally had somebody ping me and say they wanted to support the stream and they felt like gifted subs was a really fun way to do it, but they were worried about the fact that like sometimes sub alerts end up kind of like dominating the stream. And I think that's fair feedback. And then we have like 15 or 17 tied to people who subscribe for themselves, and then like another 15 or 17 tied to gifting 1 sub. So there's like all sorts of variety in there, and they're all clips from you guys. And so all of that is to say thank you guys for clipping things, because the act of making those has been really fun to go back and just laugh at some of the ridiculousness that happens over our time with you guys over the years. They're pulled from across the years. So some of them are like 5-year-old clips.
You see Chris's hair just grow.
And some of them are as recent as like the last couple weeks. So it's been really fun to go make those, and I'll keep laying those in there. I think the space on the drive over on Stream Elements has we're like 45% of the way full, and then I can pull some of the last ones down. I've been slowly trying to see how few frames a GIF can have. like what's the worst frames per second? Because the video is what's eating up the file size. So I've got it down at 9. I started at 15 because that's the recommendation. That's what all the when you download a meme off like Jiffy or something, that's what those run at. And I've slowly pulled it down to 9. So if you wonder why we're kind of stuttery, it's like it just needs to be visual enough that you know what's happening. But that cuts file size down drastically. All right, let's get on with this.
All right, guys. We are going to be talking about Diablo 4. Chris and I both had the opportunity to play it back in the day. I really enjoyed what they showed off. It is an exciting time to be a fan of Diablo, and it's at the same time, it's an interesting time to be concerned about how they're going to monetize. Does this mean for the future? All in all, it's going to be very interesting. Now, Chris and I actually haven't really talked about it in terms of like what we are seeing online and what people are saying. So this is a good opportunity for us to kind of get caught up on the state of Diablo 4, our expectations for its launch. And the question first to you, Chris, is, are you going to be playing Diablo 4, or do any of the things warrant a delay?
So I think, first of all, is we haven't spent a lot of time talking about that genre of game. And so I want to kind of just talk for a little bit about kind of where you're coming from. So I played a fair bit of Lost Ark. I played a lot of Wolcen, actually. I played a ton of previous Diablos. And I never really spent a lot of time with Path of Exiles. I've watched a lot of it, never really spent a lot of time. And those are kind of like the defining titles that jump to mind as far as that style of gameplay. There are other games I played that kind of fall really close, but those are the ones that define it. And so I've played a lot of them over the years, but I play them very seasonally. And so a game being a success or not a success, it doesn't matter if it can hold me forever, because I've always thought of them as very, very seasonal games. And seasonal is a word they've ended up kind of using as a way to long-term support those games. So they are aware of this and leaning into the seasonal nature of games like this, where if you want to take a season off, that's fine. There will be another season. You just hop back in. So right out of the gate, that's kind of my history with the genre. You and I did get a chance to play the tech demo when it was available back at BlizzCon. The tech demo obviously just being really, really rough. I thought it played great, but like it could have changed a ton since then. when we talk about monetization, I think that's another topic. So first of all, kind of like, where are you coming from on this topic?
So when it comes down to it, I could care. Like, I don't like pay to win. But I don't think. I think the problem is that pay to win in terms of gaming culture has been insanely like watered down, and it could mean anything to everybody. Also, I don't subscribe to the idea that a gamer will avoid a game if the game is good. And so I've seen a lot of people like, I'll never play a free to play game, yada, yada, yada. Oh, it turns out free to play games a lot of fun. Well, guys, you do you, right? Like the reality is that I don't struggle with feeling like my money is just kind of getting yeeted out into the void, because thankfully I don't have that problem, and I also have a wife that probably would murder me. Like, how much did you spend on Diablo Immortal? Nothing. How much did you spend on Lost Ark? Nothing. Like, how much did you spend on like the X, Y, and Z game? Nothing. Like, it's like I just haven't spent money on it. And so like in Lost Ark, actually I bought the pack, which is fine because I actually played a lot in Korea. But more or less, I guess Tower of Fantasy. How much did you spend on Genshin Impact? Nothing. Like, I haven't spent any money. I just kind of play them, and if I decide to really get invested in it, I got no problem supporting it. The question is how do you then monetize it? Personally speaking, I don't think the battle pass is ultimately a flawed idea. I think its implementation in games is flawed. And so I'm hoping that we'll see the evolution of the battle pass, especially in a game like Diablo or in anything else, to kind of look what Halo did right. Like everything else is they need to work on it, but what they did right is allow you to own that battle pass, and you can equip it whenever you want. So even if you don't finish it, it doesn't just disappear. You can literally go back and select battle pass from season 1 or whatever, and grind on it if that's what you want to do. You bought it, and then I think that also opens it up for them to sell battle passes at any point in time. It's not always about the moment, but it's about like, hey, we have this content if you want to go grind on it. And so if they were able to go into that direction, they want to monetize with cash. Like that's what the monetization system is. That's when you go look at the like all the games, everybody who's as a part of the next generation of gamers is trained up in vanity and battle pass. And I think Diablo has a unique opportunity to kind of capitalize on that. What will be a weird thing is that obviously you have Diablo as an established franchise with an established player base, and you also have this established seasonal model, and that seasonal model is changing into the battle pass model. And I think there's definitely going to be some friction, some frustration there. And you obviously have the fear mongering and concerns after Immortal. But I think that could actually benefit Diablo 4 in the long run, because if everybody's worried that the monetization is just going to be absolutely garbage, and then it turns out that it's like, oh, that's actually okay. Like, then you're not going in saying we're going to have the perfect monetization model. It's going to be so gamer focused. And then all of a sudden it's like, then you have Immortal, where it's like that's what happened there. They're like, hey, yeah, this is us. We're the ones who are setting this. And then all of a sudden you go into Immortal and you're like, this is a massive, massive cash grab. But that's just what I think. What do you think?
Okay, so we'll jump to monetization. So Diablo 3 on launch had a monetization choice. There had been a secondary market for items in Diablo 2. Mm-hmm. Blizzard saw none of that money. People lost a lot of accounts. There was a lot of heartache. I don't remember when the WoW token was, if it was before that or after that. But like monetization in games had been kind of this like, how do we handle this? So they decided we're going to do a real money auction house. And now the real money auction house, I had friends that made like hundreds and hundreds of dollars doing this. It on its own, it basically kind of was like, oh, and if you find something really cool, you can sell it. But it kind of turned everything really goofy really fast. And then it also meant that anything a certain value, like it just screwed things, as opposed to the barter system that exists in Diablo 2. It just scaled everything really weird. And then when they pulled it out, everything had been built around it. And so the game didn't like immediately, you kind of pulled this support out, and part of the one side of the game felt like it just kind of crumbled, and then they had to build it back up. And so I think Diablo 3 kind of grew back into something that was like really beautiful, considering that half of it was renovated. But it does make you wonder what Diablo 3 could have been had they not like had to collapse one side of the building the week they moved in. Like it's just it was hard. But it became something that's been really successful, and like it's moved to things like Switch, and it's invited a lot of people into the Diablo franchise. And there's a lot of good things about what Diablo 3 is over its whole life cycle. It's just been marred by some really unfortunate choices. So when I look at Diablo 4, I think the first concern is people are going to think that it's the same people that did Diablo Immortal. And I would say that it's kind of like when people said that Blizzard was bad because of Activision, forgetting that Blizzard was perfectly capable of making mistakes before Activision. So I would say that if there are mistakes, that's not a sign that Diablo Immortal bled in, because there were already mistakes in mainline Diablos before that. And so they're perfectly capable. Had Diablo Immortal never released, they would still be capable of screwing up monetization out of the gate. And Diablo 3 has taught us that doesn't mean a death sentence. With a game like this that is truly seasonal, all that means is don't play the first season. And so there can still be a lot of beauty. If you've never played Diablo 3 and it goes on sale or something now, playing a single season of Diablo 3 now can still be a lot of fun. And there's a lot I like about that game. So I think I have a lot of hope for it. Their support for Diablo 2 coming back and everything they've done with Diablo 2 Resurgence or whatever reword they've assigned to things now, because Reforged is off the table. Like it's been really amazing to watch that get supported. So I'm really hopeful for Diablo 4. I think it has a chance. I think it'll do really great out of the gate. Diablo Immortal's still like top of the App Store, even with all the hate. So if nothing else, the hype alone will drive pre-orders.
Well, hype is just a hell of a drug for gamers as well. So it's that even if it has bad monetization, if the game's a lot of fun to play, I think a lot of people will excuse it. They'll make an excuse for it, and then eventually that it will come back. You know, once that hype dies down, once that initial rush of excitement dies down, and then if you're left with this person just asking for money, then all of a sudden you see the opposite thing happen, where it's just enraged, like gamers just then, you know, so you have these highs and lows, and that's an algorithmic, I think, function of our current, you know, society, and with YouTube and Twitch and Twitter and all the things that kind of that drive that. But before you jump in, Vasa says, talking about the FOMO of it, and that's why it's like, if you own a battle pass, the FOMO in that fear of missing out gets lessened, because literally you can choose to work on it whenever you do. When too much artificial FOMO is injected into any kind of monetization system, I completely opt the F out. I literally am like, oh, you're telling me I literally need to grind on this game nonstop for the next 90 days with, even if it was like, oh, it's only going to take you 30 to do this or 15 to do it. No, I'll be like, no, it's not worth it. Like, but if you're saying that I can own that battle pass and grind on it whenever I choose, I'll absolutely purchase it, because I like that. I want to support the games that I like, and I want to support the systems that I like. And the best way to, in my mind, you vote is with your dollar. But you're going to say something, Chris?
I think that the second half of this, I'd love to focus also on like, what do we want from gameplay? So like I started by saying, like, here's my history with this game type, and I do enjoy them. And then we stop to talk about monetization, because if you don't talk about it, it seems like you're whitewashing it. So like that is naturally the second part of the conversation. And I think I'd love to shift.
Sure. Let's talk. Well,
so no, we've covered what do we want from gameplay.
They've already delivered everything for me. I can't wait to hear what you got. Go ahead.
So, like, when I played Wolcen on launch, any of you that played Wolcen on launch, I had to go back. Wolcen on launch allowed for an insane amount of build variety, which meant that it was way beyond anything that could have possibly been quality checked, which means you could get yourself so far outside of the meta that once the community started finding these big power builds, the highs were so high and the lows were so low, that it got to where you felt like you couldn't even try out other builds, because you had to go backward in progression so much. You could push these really high, deep levels, these like hell levels. You could push them really high with these better builds, and then you would try another build and it would set you back. You're like, well, that was a mistake. So like, but Diablo 2, I felt like there was so much build variety and I didn't feel penalized like that. So what I want is Diablo 2. I want runes back. I want variety back. And I love what they've started to do with this kind of seasonal Like, we're going to add a set, or we're going to just toss a wrench into the machine and see what it does. So I think the first thing that like I really want confirmation on, they've talked on it in some panels and stuff, but as we get closer, I want to start seeing evidence that this is a game that if one season's not for you, that the system's going to continue to evolve. The advantage of something like Diablo 4 over Final Fantasy 14 for me, why would I take a break and play Diablo 4, is build variety. Because build variety in a game like that, if it breaks, it all resets at the season anyway, and we're used to that. And I don't need to preserve old content. I don't need to be balanced with other players. It's all small lobby stuff. So like, ideally for me, I'm excited to break some stuff, but not to the point where we have to leave people behind. So like, I think it's a lot better when like we can really go loose, true, just agency to the point of as far as you can go without beginning of Wilson. Wilson got fixed that later, and it was way better when I went back for another season. As far as you can go.
I need to go jump back into Wilson. Did they ever add controller support?
I don't know.
Bummer.
I don't play games with controller.
Well, because Diablo 4's got controller support. Diablo 4's got crossplay, cross-prog.
Shooters with. I only play shooters. Shooters and racing games are the only things I use a controller for.
I'm just saying, like, for me, when you talk about that, that sounds great. They've already kind of shown that off, and as long as they don't cut it, like, build variety and options are awesome. And yes, there will always be a meta, but F that meta, dude. Like, I don't care. Like, metas are only important when matchmaking, I think, is implemented as opposed to that. Because if we're all like, hey, let's get together. Oh, I'm going to bring my wacky kind of build because it does these things, and it might, even synergize with your options that you've chosen.
Okay.
So we can, things like that. Like, I like that aspect, but meta is a form.
Do you like class synergy?
Yeah, I always
like when two people together are better than individual.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And so like if there's skills that can synergize off of one another, that'd be sweet, because then essentially like, yeah, maybe that skill isn't meta, but then you rocking this skill and me rocking this skill, we're clearly doing better than everybody's prescribed meta. And so, but that's where matchmaking comes in. Matchmaking and meta becomes the be all end all, because it becomes this community standard, this unspoken agreement that if we're going to get teamed up together, that what you're doing. So you're not, like having a negative impact on my experience. And that's where like, that's just where I come into it. So the ability to do that, the ability to respect, the ability to save, like maybe these builds would be epic. And the fact that when it comes down to it, 14's with the gears, like it doesn't have builds in 14, but it would be like, at least you can have that saved aspect. So you're not sitting here having to, Chris and I are playing together. Let me try to remember what I was doing. That is important to me. That's also the same thing with Destiny. It's like, I'm glad Destiny's finally getting loadouts in the game itself, because then it gives me the ability to experiment more, in a more casual way that's more fun and flexible.
I mean, I think there will always be a meta, because ultimately better is better. And while not everybody wants to be the best, nobody wants to suck. And so when you only have so many hours in a day, I think that metas establish. But if we're going to be additive here, and I'm just going to pile on top of everything you say, then what I would love for that to have, if we're going to have respecs and loadouts and all that, is one of the things that Diablo 2 kind of stops you from doing that, or one of the things that these games make very hard, is account wide. And so giving me the ability to manage like an armory across all my classes and switch to them more seamlessly. Like imagine if you could have Final Fantasy job swaps with like a Guild Wars account wide system in a Diablo 2 build environment. One of the hard things about Destiny is that you get this piece of loot for your hunter, and the act of switching to your hunter, especially back when I was on a machine that had really long load times, I had to like log out and then and then back into a fire team. And so like, it's like, well, then I'm just like, I played hunter. It's like, well, I'm just not going to play warlock. Like the act of building out a warlock just made me want nothing to do with it.
Well, it's the same thing. And that is going to tie into our next topic about like, well, I guess I got to go do the story again, and I got to do this again. And I got to like, I don't want that. Like, is there a way, like, so you're exactly on point. Now, I want to make sure, is there any, like, cause I've listed everything that I want. Is there anything else that you want in terms of Diablo 4 and content? Because you pretty much teed off the last topic for today's show.
No, I think that's really it. I just want a game it's always going to be a secondary game to me. So, something to explore, and it doesn't need to be perfect. So it's not my bread and butter. It's not where I get all my entertainment hours. So, I'm excited about it. And I know that, I'll come for your Warlock. No, I'm not coming for your Warlock because I don't want the load screen. I'm interested in Warlock, and I'm just not going to take the time to unload my Hunter. I picked Hunter the first time I played Destiny 2, and now I'm locked in.
You're locked in forever.
Screen. I can't try them out. Can't do it. Actually, I think mine are leveled. But so I'm ready to talk about alts in Final Fantasy 14 and why Yoshi P's recent comments makes that kind of a weird topic now. But yeah, I see people saying like this will drive them to PoE. If nothing else, D4 kind of reinvigorates that genre, and it's the importance of genres. When we talked about MMOs, when people say WoW is dead, that's bad for all MMOs. So don't hope for that. So D4 can be good even for Path of Exile. So just more games that are more fun for more people. I hope Diablo 4 can be that. And if it's not, I think that's bad for everybody.
Absolutely. Anyhow, guys, that was the Diablo 4 conversation. If hopefully you enjoyed this video and stream, if you did, hit that like button, subscribe for more of these, or join us on our live shows where we film this Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the mornings. So it's great having you here. Now, next up, we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy 14. Is it alt friendly? Some conversations have been erupting online, especially on Discord, regarding just go play a healer. Just go try a healer. Yoshi P's words did not land in for several of us, and what he said and what we kind of think about that. This is a conversation we've actually had multiple times and multiple frustrations. So we're going to be talking about the alt friendliness of Final Fantasy 14, and is it something that can be improved on, and how would we want to see it improved when we come back from this Twitch break. If you're over here on YouTube, you might just continue to hear us talk.
So Jess can ask how much Diablo 2 I play, and I see a sub badge, so we can answer that. How much Guild Wars 2 have I played? I have 2 level capped characters, and I still have both my boosts intact. And I have cleared a little of every single piece of content in the game. I have all of my Tyria map completion done. I've done the base story of Tyria, but I've story skipped through everything else. I have a character that I take story very seriously, and I have a character that I just chase gameplay, so I just push escape through all the cutscenes. That's my main, because that's how I play MMOs to start. And then I've done a fair bit of PvP. I'm a warrior main. I'm doing Bladesworn currently. I've full map cleared all but like the final zone of End of Dragons. And I am very close to being done with like the 4th or 5th step of my sky scale. So I would say, and I'm doing all that without guides. So we've been doing that on Mondays. And I need to do a little bit of it this week just because like I'm about to finish a step, and Gork typically has said like I need a day. And so I assume he needs a day after this. So I need to just finish this step up. So I like Guild Wars a lot. It's probably my secondary MMO. I think I've played a lot more of it than people think I have. But then on a Guild Wars stream, people were like, oh, people are watching this guy play Guild Wars. Does he know what he's talking about? No. So like compared to like true Guild Wars experts, when you get into watching people like Rookery or Teapot or any of them, like I'm a moron. But I have played a fair bit of it. So I really like it. There are issues that pop up as a veteran. There are problems with lateral systems. That doesn't mean lateral systems aren't the solution to a lot of vertical games. So like everything's a pro and con. And so when I say, oh, Guild Wars would fix this thing, yes. And ideally you would implement only a fraction of what Guild Wars did, because if you implement all of what Guild Wars did, you're going to end up with all the same problems as Guild Wars. And, you know, when you talk about build balance, and when you talk about, there's just a lot of flaws in Guild Wars as well. And then there's a lot of systems that can just die in a lateral world. They don't feel good because they feel current, but they're dead. So like dungeons and stuff just get dropped. And then fractals feel like they're in a weird place right now. Now I'm only like, I don't know, 90 agony resist or something. And so I run with my friends who are all like 170. So I get to run a lot of fractals, but like I haven't. And what it is I don't have enough ascended gear yet. I only have like 4 or 5 slots. So, I think Guild Wars really struggles because like we're talking about Guild Wars here for everybody. Welcome back from the ad break. But like the flaw of Guild Wars, since we talk about it as kind of the solution to a lot of problems in games, the flaw of Guild Wars is End of Dragons released back in February. And it came out with a new story, new bosses, new all the things. Because it's a lateral system, a lot of my longtime Guild Wars playing friends have said, why would I do it? Like they're like, I'm not trying to tell you I'm not going to do it. I'm just asking you to give me a reason. because I feel like they already have legendaries across multiple builds across all their classes are capped. They end up, they have 20 characters at cap or something. And so they just feel like a lack of motivation because they get to where they've climbed to the top of 20 mountains that are all the same height. And they're like, hey, we added 10 more mountains of the same height. I think I'm just done climbing mountains. As opposed to a vertical progression system where every time you get to the peak, they go, that's not the peak. This is the peak. And so every 2 years they reset the peak. And the frustration is you're like, I always get to the peak only to find out that there's further. But as a Guild Wars player, but at least you get to be climbing.
Well, I think especially like vertical progression systems make games smaller, where horizontal progression systems make games larger. And then I've seen somebody actually put together an infographic about how you can then actually blend the two together to really have kind of an insane experience. So if you think about it, let's say in Final Fantasy 14 terms, that the level cap was 50. And then for for Heaven's Word, for Stormblood, for Shadowbringers, and for Endwalker, the level cap is still 50. And then you have systems that kind of incorporate that. So it gets more content that's all set for that. Then you have what would be called acts. And so then Act 2 drops, and Act 2 maybe says, hey, now the level cap is 60. So you have both a horizontal progression that happens over the course of expansions, and then at the same time, you have the ability to kind of, in a way, chapter that now, and then all of a sudden you have these different things. So it's not like every 2 years the level cap just increases, not every 4 months or 6 or 8 months that the like in the gear store can still keep going up within the horizontal, kind of progression system. So it's an interesting thought experiment because it's something that I see debated within that. And most people are more used to the WoW and 14 method because those are the more popular games. Clearly the question ends up being, is there kind of a hybrid? Because like when you look at, Guild Wars, like could they have done that, kept it, like at 80, and then now that they've kind of done all of this, then it's like, okay, now we're going to slowly increase it so that over the span of 20 and 30 years, you're not doing what WoW had to do and just kind of claw everything back,
The problem is always going to be, do you give power? If you do give power, then that power will be acquired. And the moment it's acquired, if you either have to lessen how hard it is to get that power so that new players can catch up, or you have to create a disparity where veteran players have done it. If you don't put power, then veteran players eventually ask, why do it? Right. I'm doing the same content. I was clearing these raids before, and now you came out with new classes, and I'm clearing the same raids for the same loot with the new classes. That's not enough. Like, if you're not giving me power, you're not giving me power. And so, like, it's literally, if you give them power, it's flawed in some aspects, it's successful in others. And if you don't give them power, it's flawed in some aspects and it's successful in others. Yeah. So it's always going to be a pro con. If there was one perfect solution, games would have just done it by now.
Here's the perfect solution. Oh, done. We found it.
And where all of these systems show their cracks is if they make the mistake of accidentally living a long time. Like, that's it.
Being successful.
Like that's it. If you're successful, that's what does it. So when we talk back, when you talk about your favorite games, you talk about things like Warhammer Online. They get to be this ephemeral, perfect thing to you because it died. Like, and it always gets to be this magical memory.
It never got to age into its problems.
Nobody wants to see their favorite rock star be old and struggling. Yeah. It just, so it's like, that's the problem WoW 14 and Guild Wars are having for the people that are frustrated with them, is that they made the mistake of lasting. So it's a good thing.
Now we let's jump into our topic, our final topic for today's show. Final Fantasy 14 not being alt friendly, as a discussion that's going on within the 14 community, especially in terms of what we were just talking about with Guild Wars. Like, games that are successful kind of age into some of these problems. And Chris kind of brought this up as even in the last segment when we were talking about Diablo 4. So guys, be sure to keep a lookout for those videos as they roll out here on the channel. Be sure to like these videos as well so you don't miss when we upload as that rolls out. That's a great way of helping out in the algorithm. And it's a great way of making sure you see the content or be a part of the Discord and community as we do lots of gaming, a lot of MMOs together. Links are all in the description. But now let's talk about this, because to catch everybody up to speed, if they haven't been paying attention, Chris and I did a marathon stream show for you guys going through the Q&A. I actually got that full video posted if you guys want to just go watch that part of it. Yoshi P said, in order to address the disparity between healers and the current Savage tier, he just wants to encourage people to go try healers. What's the problem with that, Chris? Why does that fail? Why is that mindset not in line with the reality of the situation?
Let's assume everybody likes learning new jobs, and that within the amount of playtime they have in a week, they're more than capable of switching to the healer and playing it at the same degree as they do the job they play now, and that they will find out they enjoy it. So I've been playing Warrior as my main since mid Stormblood. Before that, I played Black Mage. I'm going to pick up healer. I'm immediately going to be good at it, and I'm going to like it just as much as I did those things. Let's assume that. I have been clearing and capping my tomes every single week. You're supposed to be getting your P8 normal clear every single week. You're supposed to get as many Savage clears as you can, have a crafted set, an extreme weapon, whatever, wherever you're at in the gear progression. Do you just have to toss that in the trash now?
Right. You do.
Like, how do you do that?
Right. And a lot of people said that, oh, you can clear with 610 gear. And it's like, you're asking someone to invest in one way and then all of a sudden have to start that entire investment over again. And so my point about it isn't that it is the issue of trying healer. It's that you then have weekly caps that gate you from getting caught back up to where you were, as opposed to anything else. And that doesn't seem fair. It never has seemed fair. And so we've seen people, and we've talked about this in the past, like ideas that we've kind of talked about. And again, these aren't like easy fix, like, oh, they just need to flip a switch and it's done. Like, these are core fundamental things that Yoshi P and the team need to ask themselves about what the future of Final Fantasy XIV Endgame needs to be. Because do you have tomes cap per roll? You know, in that regards, that's one way to kind of help address, is that you get the tomes and you can kind of spend it in the different roles. Do you reduce the cost of other gear that after you purchase gear? So like, let's say you got a full tank spec, you got everything. Well, by purchasing all of that, then reducing the overall cost. So it ends up being where you could get a full healer set pretty daggum quickly. So it isn't necessarily that they need to like completely revitalize or fully overhaul the core end game progression, but there needs to be something there, because like Just Try Healer works fine on day one when you're making an investment at a 0.0 or 0.2 or a 0.4 patch. But when you're talking about weeks of investment, weeks of progression, not just learning the different role, but like literally having to say like, okay, we need you to switch to this role. And yeah, you're going to be behind. That is unfortunately what they're asking. Or the other option, I think, Chris and I were talking about this a little bit last night. The other option is go make another character, which kind of defeats the core philosophy of playing every job on one character, which we already have as the game's evolved, other problems. But also, as the game's evolved, playing another character is how many hours of story, even if you hit skip, or even if you pay to maintain multiple characters in different roles, so you're not hit by those weekly caps. And then also knowing that today, because knowing that today means you're still behind the weekly anyway. It's just easier to switch to healer and get back and get in on that grind process. But you would have to be like, I want to raid. I should at least have 2 characters. And then you're like, well, if you're going to have a character per job or a character per role anyway, like, what are we doing here? Like, there needs to be something. And I think it really needs to come down to an investment and an understanding and maybe even a fundamental redesign of the structure of Endgame, because I understand the core philosophy of why there's a weekly cap, because you don't want people grinding their butts off to the point where they burn out. And, and they're like, I hate this game. I played it 1,000 hours this week. Like, well, why did you do that? Well, because there are no limits. Right. And then, but also it keeps players who have more time from obviously getting so far ahead that other people can't keep up, but that gate still hits. And we've seen them address this in certain ways before, where after a certain period of time, that tome cap actually gets increased, but we don't see that till the very end of the expansion. And ultimately, like, maybe there'd be an argument for laxing that, or so I've seen people talk about trading in gear, like, oh, I'm going to switch my tank set for a healer set, so that way I can kind of pick up with my progression and try that healer out. But what do you think, Chris? Like, we're playing in a sandbox here of ideas. Like, what would you like to see?
So where I get frustrated with it is then people just want to have alts. And I was literally Googling speed clears to make sure I'm as like up to date as possible. I can't find anybody that's speed clearing. Like, I can't find anybody that can beat ARR in less than like 12 to 16 hours speed clearing it. Because remember, that's not a new game plus speed clear. I've seen some of those, but those people have all the teleports unlocked. They have mounts, and everything's dying in one shot. So, like, unless you're going to buy a skip, the only thing you can do free on your account is create another character and go through the story. Even as a speed clear, you're going to push escape through everything because you've already done it. It's still a journey. So the idea, and then you're talking about now I've got to maintain both sets of tomes. Well, Chris, that's only 3 rounds. That's only 3 hunt trains. So suck it up. Do an extra 3 hunt trains. Okay. And now I have to prog as this other job on Savage on this other character each time. Well, my static already does to, we already do split runs. Okay. So now when there's a P, now, like, how do I keep, now I have to get extreme weapons on 2 sets of rolls. Like, it just keeps stacking and stacking and stacking. And one of the beauties of in-game in this game is that if you like raiding, all you have to do is raiding. There's very little outside of this, but the moment you take that very little outside of this and you start doubling it or tripling it, it does add up. Tomes and making sure you always have enough gil to kind of keep your flasks and stuff around, and making sure you're buying your crafted sets all melded. And they're not a big deal when it's one job every 8 months. They're not a big deal. But if you start doubling that or tripling that, it does add up. And so, yes, there are people who keep 3 characters geared. There are people who keep 10 characters geared. I don't, that's fine. But is that what we want to be the norm? And so he talked about it like, oh, just try healer. But you're already talking about a huge player skill disparity. Do you guys want healers in Savage who not only are behind now on gear, but also were spending the first 7 weeks of prog as a DPS and have never healed? Like, is that what we want in Savage? Because this all came out of the fact that Party Finder can have multiple groups sitting there that are at 6 of 8, missing 2 healers. So I think there's just a fundamental flaw in that being the answer. The answer can't be, well, you just do it. Just like the answer can't be, if you don't like something about this game, just play another game. The devs can't be like, yeah, and we're just making sure that anything people ask for that we don't want to do, we just kick them out. Like, that's not a good answer. So now, as something that's coming up on, I will have 2 Omni 90s by the end of this expansion. I just don't think that should be what's expected of everybody.
Yeah. See, I am a healer. Like, it's like I would be in end-game healing if I literally had the time and the interest. And it doesn't bother me. Like, I like the healing aspect. And we talk about that also. People are like, oh, you're not going to change, the society issue of like people want to be a green DPS. And this current prog is asking for more healer checks. I'm glad they're doing more healer checks. And this is probably a little bit of that cost. My issue is fundamentally in terms of like, okay, you want to try healer, your progression system is a limiting factor, and making that switch isn't. And I don't think it's a fair ask. I don't think it's a fair ask to the players, especially in the idea of where you can play on one character, any different role, with the exception of endgame. Like it with the like where how it's like it is a kind of a contradiction almost in a way of like how the core game is designed and how it then unfolds on itself, as opposed to like, oh, well, and this could be done through like a gearing system. Do we let crafted gear be upgraded in a different kind of capacity? It doesn't have to, they don't have to fundamentally change how the tomes work and how the end game raid per works, but maybe there would be a crafted gear solution that allows you to make that change a little bit easier in some respect. Like, there are solutions. I don't know what Yoshi P and the team will do. I just hope that they're actively hearing these things and actually then coming up with some kind of plan that would be for 7.0 or 8.0. Like, when I talk about this, is like, I don't think it's going to change overnight. I think this is going to be a problem we're going to carry with us for a little while forward.
So I don't want tome cap to just increase, because doubling it from 450 to 900 is just a lesser version of it all, because now I still have to do twice as many trains per week. So that's not a solution to me, because you're still asking me to double my outside of raid playtime if I'm somebody who only likes raids in this case. I would rather see once you've bought one chest piece, other chest pieces are cheaper.
Yeah.
So that your tomes go further. So it
Yeah.
acts as kind of a soft nerf. So maybe your first chest piece is, what is it, 800, 825?
800, yeah.
And your second one is 500. And your third one is 300. And your fourth one is 200. And your fifth and final one is 90 tomes or something. So that you can kind of just ramp down this gear. So it acts as this soft nerf. So by the end of a patch cycle, I would love to know that by the end of from 6.2 to 6.3, if you got all your savage clears every single week and you capped every single week, that you were looking at having multiple rolls geared, because it's ramping down. Or we have a new half patch system. So Mythic Plus cannot be a source of raid ready gear without being required by raiders, because it releases at the same time. But because of the way Criterion is releasing at the half patch, it acts as that natural nerf. So you could have, I don't know anything about Criterion. So we're filming this on October 12th. We're going into Criterion very, very soon. But imagine if Criterion dropped Savage equivalent loot. Then 2 months in, that becomes a way to gear alts. It does then say to raiders that want to have multiple roles, you have to do Criterion. So I hesitate to say it's a perfect solution, because I don't like the idea that somebody who simply likes raiding is asked to do more things that are not raiding. That's one of my issues with WoW. If you're a raider, cool, you're a raider. Here's 10 things that aren't raiding that you're now required to do. I love that about 14. If you like raiding, what do I have to do? Just raid. Well, what if I don't like raiding? Then don't raid. Well, what if I like story? Just do story. Well, what if I don't like story? Then don't do story. Like, kind of. And so, like, I like
don't make content if you don't do story.
I like the systems being self-contained,
yeah,
because it means that at each system, we aren't artificially driving engagement numbers by holding a portion of the player base hostage.
Yeah, I like your idea, obviously, of lowering the cost of subsequent pieces of gear. That way, if you have that collection mindset, if you do have that aspect, that it is mitigated off of your own investment already. You're already playing it. You're already getting the tomes. You're already purchasing the gear. And so that if in a couple of weeks you're looking at the board, right? Like right now, oh, there's no healers. Just try healer becomes so much easier, because you're like, oh, well, I've already gotten all that. Just buy the second set, and you get it done within a week, right? Like it's the additional ask that I struggle with. It's the additional ask of the frustration. I'm like, oh yeah, like I've already got that leveled, but now I got to get back on this treadmill a second time, and I'm not going to catch up to the original runners. Like there's no possible way that you can until they've reached the theory, right? You know, so they'll always be ahead, as opposed to like, oh, okay, cool. And then within like a little bit of a grind, I'm not advocating for less grind. I like that. Now, Crispy says, and this we get a good kind of thought that I'd like to hear, where he says, make gear universal and have a MacGuffin to hone up upgrade gear similar to Lost Ark's version without failure. What do you think, Chris?
So, what I don't like about hone upgrade is that then they become mandatory. So anybody who's ever done augmenting feels really weird. So one of the things I really like about how simple our gearing system is that it's simple. You literally just affix the materia. And outside of pentamelding, there's very, very little to learn. You basically just learn what your stat priority is. You have 2 slots. You just slide in the gear, and then you're done. And augmenting is done very rarely. Any of you have ever done augmenting? It's a menu nightmare. It's just like, oh, I got to go get the floss from turning in my sacks of nuts, and then I gotta go take the gear off and then hand it to a person, and then switch menus through an old JRPG type thing. And then I bought the wrong tiers. I guess those are my tiers because I'm crying now. And the whole thing is just cumbersome. And you're like, how many of these things do I need? And then I can turn bracelets into boots. The whole thing is just wildly confusing. So if they're going to have a hone in and upgrade system, that needs to all be redone from the ground up. The benefit of having a really simple gear system is that balance is something that historically has been pretty good in this game. The downside is we have no build variety, and there's no depth for people who like getting into gear optimization, because we don't have like trinkets that change the way we play or anything like that. So I don't mind the idea of upgrading gear I just hope that it's something that would be done very easy. So maybe it's done as like an additional use of books, and then we get more books or something like that.
Yeah.
Where it's something very, very simple. Ideally, something that I can apply to the gear while it's equipped. I get a book and I just straight up apply it. And now it gets a glowy border.
I love
and
that.
that means it has its extra 5 item levels. Why the hell does Materia not increase item levels so that new players know that
We've
it's
been saying
doing
that since
something?
ARR. We said that since ARR.
Just
Like, oh, give it 1.
Make the number go higher. I just want the number to go higher. And so that's kind of where I'm at, just because like the only times that they've done upgrading gear, I already feel that 14 makes it weird. The only time I'm in full augmented is Poetics gear, where it's handled. Like augmented, I just find cumbersome.
Yeah, it is cumbersome, and there's nothing. And so that's where it's like, I would love and hope that, because also Japanese, like what the core aspect is that the Japanese side of this is actually bringing this up in a very loud way. This isn't coming from like North America Reddit. This is coming from the official forums in Japan. And I hope that because of that, this becomes a bigger issue and something that Yoshi P and the team take some design time to kind of really think through. What is the end game progression needing to become 7.0, etc. Like, I don't think we're going to see it change now, nor would I actually want that, because I think it would cause too much, too many problems, too many, like, it just makes more sense to say, like, okay, now we're in 7.0. What kind of things would we love to see? Gear upgrades would be one of those things. I've talked about that, especially with old relics. Like, I know we have the glamour system and everything kind of shifts to that, but I wouldn't mind being able to find pieces of gear that I invest in, and I'm able to, level those up and, yes, augment those up and find ways that I can sit down and say, like, yep, this is the set that I want. So there's got to be, I think,
all that. Can Melee all move to one set?
Are we just asking for more homogenization at that point, though?
No. WoW has gear that adjusts. My druid gets a druid slot and it changes stats based on what spec I'm in. So if you want to have them all be different statted, that's fine. That does become an issue with how do you slot the materia, but black mages and red mages and warriors and the other tanks are already telling you, like, well, screw off. Like, we have already experienced that, and just get in line. And materia should have been moved to weapons and jobstones only a million years ago so that it wasn't on shared gear. But like, I don't mind if, because I'm a ninja main, my dragoon is in bad gear. What I don't like is that Melee is the only role that somebody's like, I want to try a different way of playing Melee. Oh, wait, I don't have any freaking gear. Like, it's the only one. And so it's just weird. It's just weird.
It's weird.
It's just weird.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, I think it's going to be something interesting to see we evolve, because I don't think 14 technically needs to be alt friendly. I think it could do a lot better job, though. And I think what these words and this conversation, hopefully it'll be a good point in the community to kind of take a look at and say, hey, this is how it's been. Could it be better? And so any ideas that you guys have, like, note that, please go weigh in on the forums in that way that they can have that data, and they can compile that data, and we can see that, because Yoshi P's always stated that he wants to make the game that we want to play. And I do enjoy healing in this game. But I think that when we talk about end game progression and the idea of just like, go play, go, why don't you go play tank? Why don't you go play healer? Like, okay, why am I having to why do I have to fall on that sword when nobody else is, in order to do these things? So
I think a lot of the frustration with healers is also like, are we DPSing? And if so, is DPSing fun? And are tanks using mitigation? Because P5 hits a brand new tank like a truck, and that's the first one. So yes, people want to talk about, is P6 hard, is P7 hard, is P8 hard? But like, if a healer gets dissuaded from doing P5, they're not doing P6, 7, or 8. And so like it just, and when healers are getting blamed for people getting, everything is blamed on healers. It's like, what I love is mechanics like Devour, where it's like, how come you didn't heal me? You got eaten. Like, what do you want?
What do you want?
But then you're expected to res. And so now I got to give up my mana and my swift cast because you can't get your act together. So like, healers,
I parsed gray because I was healing everybody, etc. And now nobody wants to bring me along to these other fights. So there's other issues going on.
Appreciate your healers, and Party Finder needs to have the ability to let a healer in at lower gear score. Right now I set a gear score for the entire Party Finder. I'm willing for the healer to come in at 610, but I need everybody else in here at 620. So we got to start making things more granular somehow, or we've got to start making fundamental changes to the system. The 2-minute windows and stuff has made the DPS stuff where like either people are doing it or they aren't. So it's already all in a weird spot. So I don't know. Something's got to give, and it probably will.
Yeah, so
we just got to
keep
give them
weighing in.
feedback so it gives the way we want.
So, guys, I've put in chat if you guys want to continue with us over on Twitch. Links in the description. We appreciate any and all lurkers over there. I put it on the Twitch side. I didn't put it on the YouTube side. You're already there. There we go. There we go. All right. Fun times. Thank you guys so much for being here as a part of the live show. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and we will hopefully see you in the next show and or video and or stream. Be sure to keep locked to the channel for more MMORPG news, discussion, guides, and so much more. Thanks so much for being here. Hopefully you have a wonderful day. Hopefully we'll see you next time. But until then, take care.
Not bad.
I was like, guys,
where they can do these in under 90 minutes for you, so that if you have a work day, you're done by 9.
I messaged the guy. I was like, hey, I'm running a little late, so I got to go jump into to that now. So, guys, I'm ending the broadcast over on YouTube.